couple of quick housekeeping notes. We are recording this session, so everybody will get a copy or a link rather to the recording after the session. If you do have any questions as we go through, you can drop your questions into the Q&A um, button box, whatever you want to call it, at the bottom of your screen there. We'll get to those as we go through the session and answer those. So my name is Michael Miller. I'm the Director of Marketing at Carrier's Edge, and I'm here with Mark Morell, the President of Carrier's Edge. Welcome to your own podcast, Mark,
Yes, yes, thank you.
or podcast webinar.
Yes.
I get the channels confused sometimes. So we're here. We're talking about AI and safety, um, avoiding the pitfalls. What's happening in the marketplace out there. I think this is a timely session because you can't really open any sort of media, but especially industry media, without seeing some sort of article on how AI is infiltrating trucking and how it's being used. I just got back from the National Private Truck Council Safety Conference in Orlando, and there were a couple of jam-packed sessions on AI down there. Huge interest in what's going on, and carriers want to understand what others are doing and what the opportunities are. Um, just really new, sort of really entering the zeitgeist, and I think it's important to sort of unpack this for all of you here today, and talk a little bit about what is going on, what we see as the opportunities, but also the risks associated with this. It is new. There's different, I'll call them definitions, but you say AI and it can mean different things to different people, right? It can mean, your dash cam integrations. It can mean your use of ChatGPT. It can be autonomous trucks. There's so many different things that AI can mean, and I think even that is an important piece of this. But it seems to be everywhere right now, and it seems to be um, top of I don't know if it's top of everybody's mind. It's certainly top of the media's mind, Mark. And I'm curious your take on, like, is this really a big deal? Is it overhyped? Is it underhyped? What do you think?
Well, when we were prepping this, I warned you that I was going to be an old crank, and I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm going to be extra crusty. Uh, um, but yeah, so is it actually a big deal? Yes and no. Is the opening answer to that. And first, I do want to clarify that we are going to be talking about AI and safety more broadly across the industry and how to put all of these things together. I want to make it sort of clear that we're not going to be talking specifically about the Carrier's Edge product and whether there's AI in that or hey, how AI might be used as part of our online training product. What we're going to talk about is more broadly what we see happening, what's working, what's not working across the industry, and as you pointed out, how to avoid some of the pitfalls. Um, so that's important because this is going to be kind of an assessment of the state of different things. Um, and that is going to come from a variety of different sources. I've been in the tech industry for a long time now. I've seen a lot of these cycles of new amazing technology that everybody is super excited about, and then something happens and it either crashes and burns or it does find its footing eventually, or sometimes it just never really gets there. I've seen a lot of those cycles. We also have a lot of data from the Best Fleets to Drive For program about what fleets are trying and what's working and what's not working. And we also see with our integration partners what they are doing. And we have a lot of integration partners that we work with. Many of them probably will not be happy with me at the end of this session. So that may be a little bit of a teaser of the direction that this is going to go. But we have a lot of data that we're sort of putting together, which is why I wanted to do this session. And so, is it a big deal? Yeah, I said yes and no. It is. It is a big deal, and it isn't a big deal. And I would say Yeah, the analogy that keeps sticking with me is AI right now is kind of like electricity was in the very early 1900s. There's something exciting, there's something electric in the air, to use the marketing speak, but people aren't exactly sure how it is all going to play out. You know, and the analogy that I like to use is that ultimately AI will become like power tools. We will figure out how to work it into all of the things that we do, and it will become the nail gun or the bandsaw or the belt sander that is part of the toolkit. But it won't replace necessarily all of the other tools. You still have a hammer, you still have a crescent wrench, you still have things that you use, you still have screwdrivers, and sometimes those are the best tools. So it's not at that point yet. Using the electricity analogy, it's like people have got electricity and they're trying to figure out what to do with tools. So they're like connecting their wires to their hammers and saws and electrocuting themselves in the process. Eventually, it will get to something useful. And so it is a big deal in that regard that it will absolutely be massively transformational, but it is not at that point just yet. So it's on its way. It will be a big deal. It's similar, having been through several of these tech cycles before, this feels to me a lot like what the internet bubble was like, the internet excitement in the mid 1990s. Everybody knew that it was going to be big, but nobody really knew exactly how to fit it in. And you saw a lot of headlines that are very similar, were very similar to what we see today, where companies, all of a sudden, everybody is talking about internet as part of their business plan and trying to figure out how to work it into what they're doing. And it took a while, took a good 10 years or more before people figured out how to actually make the most of it and before it was really ready for everybody else. So for some people, AI is absolutely a big deal, and for others, it's really nothing to worry about at all. It's something to be sort of aware of that it's coming, it's going to change things, but it isn't necessarily anything that you should be worrying about just yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's I wonder too, actually, I could take this in a couple of different directions, but I wonder, there's a lot of vendors you mentioned, partners that Carrier's Edge is dealing with, but a lot of other vendors out there are touting AI capabilities, and adding this in. Um, I've seen this in other industries where, um, someone says something's AI, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't, or maybe it's them just putting software on top of ChatGPT and it's not really anything particularly revolutionary. Are you seeing any trends in terms of what different types of vendors are doing to integrate AI, and where that might be taking things?
Yeah, that's a good point. And to kind of answer that, I want to step back a little bit and talk about a little bit about how the tech industry works, because that will inform sort of a lot of the reasons why things are happening the way they are. Uh, Most of the tech industry, or a large swath of it, is companies that have got outside funding. So they may be private equity owned, they may have venture capital funding, they may just have angel investors, but they got outside funding. And in that segment of the industry, there tends to be things that everybody expects to see, that everybody sort of jumps onto. And when one of those things comes up, pretty much every pitch has to include it, and every company has to talk about it or has to be seen as staying at the front line of tech advancement and looking at what they can do to be part of it. And right now, AI is that thing. So if you are a company trying to get funding right now, if you don't have AI in your pitch deck somewhere, you're not going to get funding. And if you are a company that has funding and you have to answer to your investors, it is not a particularly great time to be selling. And if you're trying to do another round of fundraising or you're trying to just do something to keep getting your business moving forward, you pretty much are going to have to talk about AI because your investors are going to be pushing it. So there's a huge segment of the industry that is being pushed to figure out something with AI, to start talking about AI, whether or not it's even applicable. And we have seen this for years. We saw this. I mean, this is why years ago we had everybody trying to do something with the internet. The reason that you have a internet connected toaster and the reason that you had clothing companies that claimed that they were now software companies is because they were getting pressure to figure out how to put this into their business plans. We're at that same spot with AI. I attended a conference, tech conference, a couple of years ago, huge tech conference. Thousands of people go to this thing, and they had about 200 sessions over the course of 3 days. Every single session, somebody asked about AI. Somebody was talking about it, even when it had absolutely nothing to do with the topic or the particular subject. There was a clothing company there that was talking about how they are scaling their business, and all the questions are about AI and clothing design. It's like, okay, that's not what we're here to talk about. Um, so these kind of things happen. And when these things happen, that's where you start getting everybody having this sense of FOMO. Whereas the vendors are like, okay, we've got to have our AI strategy. We're going to talk about how we're doing it, and we're going to figure out how to make it a part of our business plan and as part of the marketing and all of that. And on the buy side, the customers start thinking, oh, I guess I better figure out how to do this as well because everybody's talking about it. I don't want to be left behind. But a lot of that is kind of the hype cycle that is fed by investment, and nobody in the tech industry wants to miss out. No investor wants to miss the next Facebook. They don't want to miss the next, whatever giant tech that comes along that is transformational. So they're pushing all of their portfolio companies to be doing a lot with that and to make a point of trying a whole bunch of different things, and which is also what happens at the early stage of something like this is everybody tries a whole bunch of different things because nobody knows what's going to work and you don't want to miss, so you try everything. So that's kind of where we're at with AI right now. And actually, I have a slide that I'm going to share because this is classic crossing the chasm model. So we have this slide up here, which is a really nice one because it gives a little bit of context. This is from the Crossing the Chasm, which is sort of the Bible of technology companies and how to get your product to be the mainstream offering. And the chasm is the gulf between the early adopters that are interested in the tech and want to play around with it and figure things out on their own and kind of figure out what to do with this. And they know that they will get an advantage for doing that, but they're also willing to invest a lot of time and misery in figuring it out. And on the other side of the chasm are the mainstream market that don't want to do that. They just want a product that works. So just give them something that helps. So we've seen every major technology goes through this. Uh, and where we are right now in AI is before the chasm. We haven't figured out what the solutions are. It's sort of between the tech enthusiast type and the early adopters. And visionaries are starting to come out and see what they can do with the technology to make it work as part of their business. And that's why you get a whole lot of different people exploring lots of different options and trying to figure different things out. And, let's try AI powered this and AI powered that. And because nobody really knows yet how to make the best use of it. And you've got large companies like Shopify telling all of their divisions to put AI into everything that you're doing, figure it out. So nobody knows. So there's like, figure it out and then go try a whole bunch of things and figure it out, and we'll figure out what works from there. So we are seeing the same thing, taking all of that and moving it into the trucking industry and to the safety technology providers in the trucking industry. They're all doing the same thing. Okay, we're all trying to figure out how to put AI into things and make it work. There's a lot of experiments that are happening for data processing, and there's a lot of people testing different things and exploring it. And some are much more robust than others. Some have been at it for a longer time than others. But there's a lot of experiments and there's a lot of uncertainty right now. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the state of the industry.
Okay. Yeah, and that the crossing the chasm graphic is interesting. I mean, based on where we are, because I've read um, studies that have been published in different places that's saying anywhere between 70 and 90% of trucking companies are using some form of AI today, which to me seems kind of high if we haven't crossed that chasm yet, but maybe they've got some sort of
I
technology
would be
baked into
very
something.
skeptical of that stat. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say within a certain segment, and this is where size of the company makes a huge difference. If you have 1,000 trucks or more, you absolutely should be looking at AI. And maybe it's not exactly 1,000, maybe it's
Yeah.
1,200, maybe it's 950. But if you're a large organization and it is within your business strategy to be kind of the front of the pack on technology adoption, and you have the resources to be able to test things and do some experiments and to suffer the failure of some of those experiments, because most of them are not going to work the first time, you absolutely should be doing something on that. And I would say at that level, probably you've got adoption, maybe not adoption, I would say you've got pilots or experiments
Mhm.
with AI probably in that kind of range that you're talking about. I would say 70% or so are playing around with it. If you got 50 trucks, no way. It makes no sense to be doing anything like that. If you get 20 trucks, 80 trucks, there's no point. You're not going to be getting any benefit. All you're going to be doing is creating more friction for yourself internally. And at that size, they tend to not have the resources to be able to absorb the experiments and failures. It's not really a good plan, and I don't see a lot of them doing it. If we look at what we see in the Best Fleets to Drive For program, it is primarily the larger carriers that are doing it, and the ones that have the ability, the cushion to be able to play around with it a bit and not be dramatically impacted if something goes wrong. So it is coming because every vendor and a lot of the vendors that people are already using, all those vendors are putting AI into it one way or another. Like we see it just in the applications that we use. We use the Adobe suite, we use Microsoft tools. Well, you can't get away from the damn AI. You try and turn it off, and it's there whether you like it or not. Even Zoom here. How many times do we keep trying to turn off the AI from doing the terrible transcription that it does? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are adopting AI as part of our strategy. It means we have tools that are experimenting with how to use it, and those tools are learning as they go. So people are using it whether they want to or not. Anytime you do a Google search now, you're feeding an AI engine that is going to give you an AI response. And people are starting to use those and rely on those more than the traditional methods. And so there is slow uptake of the technology in those areas. But I have seen no real evidence that there's anybody that has really sort of cracked the code as to what they should be doing.
Interesting. Yeah, and that kind of makes sense because I mean I'll go back to the NPTC conference I was at. I mean, just by a show of hands, when one of the moderators asked the question, I'd say about a quarter to a third of the people in that room raised their hand and said they're doing something with AI.
Mhm.
It could be as little as they're asking Chat GPT to help them write a I don't know an SOP or a job description or something. They they're just kind of feeling around, trying it. And some of them, to your point, have been mandated by their company to look into it, see what you can do, which strikes me as you know it's almost like putting the cart before the horse. Like, where's the strategy there if you're just go find a way to use this versus what are the problems
Well,
to solve
that
and
makes sense
yeah.
at private fleets where the parent companies could be large public entities that are getting
Mm.
questions from their shareholders and from their board about how are you doing this.
Yeah.
But that also really underscores the pre-chasm nature of this that nobody knows what to do. So go and
Yeah.
figure it out. Go and try things and figure it out. So yeah, I think some of those companies are going to end up in kind of bad shape because they're smaller fleets, even though their parent company is huge, they may be smaller divisions and they may be kind of put into a bit of a squeeze if they're forced to do things that really aren't ready for prime time yet. So that's one of the things that we have to be very aware of because it's so early in the adoption cycle. these things come with lots of sharp edges, lots of prickly bits. And we see this with the dash cam stuff. Ultimately, AI-powered dash cams are going to be amazing. They're going to save a lot of, going to save lives, and they're going to make maintenance a whole lot better. And like, there's so many things that are going to be better. But right now, they are just riddled with false positives because these machines are still learning and they're still collecting data. Most of them haven't really been around for all that long, so they've got a limited set of data that they're pulling from, and they're getting better all the time. But we see this with our dashcam integrations, where when we first built that dashcam integration, I thought, okay, the idea is going to be you have X number of these events in a particular period, you're going to assign some training. So I thought, okay, like 3 hard breaks in a week. That to me sounds like, okay, you probably want to deal with that. Or 3 hard breaks, 10 hard breaks in a week, or 2 a day or something like that. We were off by an order of magnitude because the companies that we're doing these integrations with, the customers came to us and said, like, we're hitting this threshold before noon on Monday. We need more. Like, it's not 3 in a week, it's 30 because so many of them are false positives. And so right now, the companies that are working with these things and really trying to take advantage of it basically need staff dedicated to sifting through that data and cleaning it because there's so much false information coming out of it because it is so raw and unfiltered at this point. So that is something to be careful of. I mean, I think probably everybody here has got a dash cam and is in the thick of that. They're seeing the amount of false positives, and they are seeing that it's getting better, but it's still got a ways to go. So that is something to really be watching for, and it is something that is going to get better over time. But I think about your strategy. I don't know. I don't know how much I would be putting into sweating it at that at that level right now. I would be waiting a little bit on that.
Yeah, okay. That's good advice. I think I'm curious. I'll throw this out to the audience there. You can drop a yes or no in the chat if you are playing with AI right now, if you're doing anything with it, whether it's playing with one of the large language models I can speak, or it's just trying to figure out how to best utilize these dash cam integrations that you've got. Drop a yes or a no in there. I'm curious to see what that breakdown looks like with this group. Because one of the things I've heard that you referenced it there was there's a big risk in AI with the whole garbage in, garbage out sort of model. You get those false reports that you're talking about, the false positives. You can have somebody using one of the large language models like ChatGPT. If you're putting bad data in, or asking the model to do something with the data that it isn't relevant or not, then the information you're getting back out is not necessarily good. Um, I'm getting a note here that the chat's disabled. I apologize, folks. You can't drop a yes or a no in the chat. But somebody did just drop a yes into the Q&A. You can drop it in there too. But we got one yes that using AI daily. So that's a lot. I think a number of people are. But coming back to that sort of the risk with the bad information stuff, maybe, are you seeing anything in how fleets are approaching that with something like the dash cam or the integrations to mitigate that? What are companies having to do to make sure they're not, sabotaging their programs?
Well, yeah, that's another can of worms. And it sort of goes into, where it can work really well and where it can be hugely problematic. And I think the nature of the trucking industry is that you have to be very careful about how you implement this. Obviously, from a safety and liability perspective, number one, but just as important is the fact that you can't put an AI into any place that sort of gets in the way of the human connection with drivers and have success with it. And I know this sort of it goes off as a bit of a digression, but this is something that we've been watching through the Best Fleets to Drive For program and asking questions during the driver surveys, getting that driver feedback. And drivers in general are not hugely supportive of it. They like the idea, they get the idea that it helps be safe, and that's good. They're on side with that. They do get fed up with the amount of things binging and beeping in their cabs and all of the times that those things really are not meaningful. So there's certainly a learning curve, and you as safety professionals have that learning curve that you have to go through, but the drivers are dealing with it much more regularly and much more noisily in their cabs when it's alerting them on things, or every time they have something that is mildly an issue, it flags something and safety calls them to ask what happened. Like that kind of stuff ends up causing more friction in the fleet than solving anything. So you have to be careful to focus on using it in a way that enhances those personal relationships rather than minimizing them. So we've seen people putting up sort of chatbots on their website or AI-based agents to be the first point of contact with drivers, and that has never worked. Those things are kind of disastrous, and we see that across every industry. If you have attempted to contact a big telecom cable or phone provider, good luck with that. You can't even find a phone number anymore. Now you're just talking to their AI agent, and it's misery all across the board. And I saw a headline a couple of weeks ago about Taco Bell doing an experiment with what was it, AI drive-through. And they pulled the plug on that after one person came through and ordered 18,000 waters at the drive-through. Uh, so it ended up just not really working for them. Anything where you've got a human connection in trucking, that's critical. That's really valuable currency. So you want to use AI in ways that will enhance that, not in ways that will remove it or get in the way of it. So these AI agents to talk to drivers, AI dispatch, and like that kind of stuff, drivers hate that stuff. The response has really been strongly negative. On the safety side, if it is providing more data that allows you to make better decisions and allows you to build a coaching program or build some sort of mentoring or improve the safety program, those are generally seen pretty positively by the drivers as long as they're included in the process. When fleets just kind of dump it on the drivers, they're not really very receptive to that. But if fleets get drivers involved, those kind of things can work very well. You gotta take it slow, get them involved, and build on it over time. But the response that we've seen has been pretty positive. The drivers can become quite strong advocates for that if they are included in the process.
Okay, that's so it's interesting. I'm wondering, kind of related to that. I hear, concerns about, um, privacy concerns and Big Brother watching. And I know anybody who's listening who's um, tried to put, inward facing dash cams into their trucks has no doubt come up against something like that huge and that kind of pushback. But um, like how should fleets balance sort of um, AI driven insights and the data that you're talking about that can be super valuable with those kind of concerns about privacy and driver morale?
That's an interesting topic because it is an area where, on the one hand, yes, drivers have a lot of those concerns about Big Brother watching, and usually those are kind of unfounded because they're just misunderstanding what's actually happening. But at the other side of that, trucking generally doesn't pay nearly enough attention to data privacy and personal information. We still see people sending like driver's licenses and other personally identifiable information through open email. So it is an area where people should absolutely be putting a little bit more attention and be thinking about it. And I would say it's a question that the vendors are often not that excited to answer questions about what they do with the data and how they store it and how they clean it. Is it anonymized? They're starting to get better about those kind of things, but the reality is they can only train their models with your data. and then they're charging you for that at the same time. So there is a lot, and that's again is another place where the world needs to figure out how to make all of this work effectively and be fair for everybody. Anthropic just lost a lawsuit against book authors, something like 50,000 titles that they had used to train their machine in improperly and hadn't compensated the authors. And there's a pretty sizable. It's like 100 million, 100, something like a few hundred million was the
Yeah.
settlement on it. So there's a lot of those things that still need to be sorted out. And that's an issue for trucking as well. Absolutely, you want to be focused on paying attention to the information to learn from it as much as you can. But there's a lot of questions that need to be answered about the privacy of that information and what is happening with it. I kind of go the other way and say, look, you should be harsher about this. This is your information, and if people are going to be using it to train their models, you need to know what they're doing with it. Are they selling it? Are they packaging it? What are they actually storing? How long do they store it for? All of those kind of things. And then in terms of drivers, absolutely, they have a concern about who's watching them and what's happening. But the feedback that we have seen, again, looking at the integration work that we've done, how our customers are using these things, and the best fleets data, a lot of the concern is more about just uh, the inaccuracy of it. That drivers, once they understand what is being collected and how it's being used, and if they're part of that decision, they generally don't have that much of a concern about it. And certainly, anytime you go down the road of a lawsuit, and if it can exonerate a driver, they're all on side with that. The issue ends up being it's just so much of a distraction and it's just so much hassle for them. So, how do we make that easier for them? How do we make that less of an intrusion? And I mean, the whole point of this is to catch them when they're distracted while they're driving or when they're doing something that can be coached. But we don't want the tool to be a distraction on its own. And that's where we need to have balance right now.
Okay. No, that's great. Um, you mentioned there, or not in that, but earlier you said something about liability, and so with with the disclaimer, you're not a lawyer. Do you do you think that there's like is there any concern around liability when you start turning aspects of your training and your safety program over to AI tools?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
That's not even a hard
Sounding
question. And
yes.
it's not necessarily, and it's not just AI, it's any sort of technology. Anytime, in terms of liability, anytime that you pass something over to any kind of machine and don't have any sort of oversight on it, you absolutely open yourself up for exposure. I mean, it's the same thing with not looking at the training results. When, drivers do online training, you don't talk to them about their results. That opens up exposure. Or you put them in a truck and you don't pay attention to what they're doing. Like this is one of the issues that is starting to come up now, and we see it with the lawyers that we talk to, is that people are realizing that, yeah, you've got a ton of data, but if you don't do anything with that data, you can make the situation worse. Before you could say, well, we weren't aware that the driver was doing these things, and at least have some hope of an excuse there. But if there's a mountain of data coming at you and you just don't take the time to sift through it, or you don't do anything with it, then you definitely have that. Or you just rely on an AI and you never look at it. Like that just looks like laziness, and it's not going to help in court. Every lawyer cringes when we bring those subjects up.
Yeah, I guess if you're not taking the time to go through the data, you can be guaranteed though that the plaintiff counsel will take the time to go through
But
it.
that also gets to the sort of larger issue that everybody sees this, and this is always the issue in technology, and particularly in safety technology, which in trucking is relatively new. We've talked about this in other webinars before, that safety technology is really something in the last 10 or 12 years that has really come in to trucking. And so people have got a lot of these ideas. Oh, it's going to save me time. It's going to make my life so much better. And, I will be having so much time to take a long lunch and cut out early on Friday and all of that. But it never actually happens. Technology will never actually save you much time. What it will do is free up time to do other things. And people that have this mentality that, okay, I'm going to do less work because the technology does it, always end up in trouble. Whereas if they look at it like, okay, technology is going to take this particular work off my plate and allow me time to do this other thing that maybe is a higher value thing, or is better for the safety or the risk profile in general, that's where you end up having success, is looking at it like freeing up time for other things, not less total work, just different work. So when you focus on it like, okay, what can we do with that time now? How do we build a better safety profile for the fleet? That's when you get some real success out of it. And AI is kind of at the point where it's starting to do some of these things. I see some of the comments. We've got, full-time people going through looking at stuff, or we've got a data scientist on the team. Well, it's not less work, right? It's definitely not creating less work for anybody. It's creating more in some areas. But at the end of it, you can end up with a better outcome.
Okay. Okay. And what should um if a fleet is thinking about, okay, how do I dip my toes into AI, and how do I start, like, what questions should they be asking, or what should they be considering when they're trying to figure out, yeah, how do I even start with this if I'm not started already?
That's a good question. Yeah, how do you decide where to start? Well, same as with every other bit of technology, you have to look at the business and see what are the challenges that we face today. What are the things that are really critical issues for us, or issues that we have that we aren't able to tackle in other ways? Where do we have a gap? Uh, and that will lead, because everybody will have something different, but that will lead you down the road towards what you want to do. And then from there, you can start evaluating options to address those. If you come at it the other way and say, well, here's what these other fleets are doing this, so I'm going to do that as well. That is not likely going to give you success because those fleets have got different challenges. Once you know what your challenges are and how you want to try and address them, then it's perfectly logical to talk to some other fleets that have similar challenges to see how they face those things. And our customer success group does stay on top of some of that. We have some of that information that we can share. Associations, you meet people through different safety groups and things like that. They can help you get started in that area. But one of the other things that I would do is start looking at, this is sort of a giant can of worms, but start to learn about these vendors and what their background is. And they will all tell you a great story about how they're experts in this and that. And they've got so many thousands of hundreds of thousands of units on the road and all of these kind of things. But I guess what I would look at is how much they actually know about the trucking industry specifically. A lot of these solutions, AI-based safety solutions, are designed to work in any kind of commercial vehicle. So it may not be a long-haul tractor trailer. It might be a medium run or a final mile, a straight truck or a sprinter. It could be in construction. Some of them are in energy, so they're oil patch vehicles. Some of them are passenger carrying. They're like very different use cases for public utility vehicles, things that are very different than long haul trucking. And all of the companies that are providing these things are not from trucking. They're all mostly technology people, and they're generally coming out of things like optical scanning technology and those sorts of things, where that's their specialty is on the pure technical piece, and trucking is just how it is getting applied. And there's nothing wrong with coming into the industry from outside it. Every software that is successful kind of does that. We certainly did that. But how long have they been in the industry? How much do they know about the actual industry themselves? And from that, sort of, who are their internal experts on the trucking industry. You want to be able to have a conversation with somebody who knows what you're actually going through and isn't trying to say or trying to relate what you were saying to what they said to their fleet of taxis that they were talking to yesterday, or school buses or something. There's very different use cases. So you want to try and find some vendors that have got some experience in those areas and are really focused on that segment so that they can learn what's working and what's not working. And I would also look for a vendor. I would look for somebody that is kind of realistic about what to expect. They all want it to get to the point where it's amazing for everybody and it covers everything. But the smart ones realize that, yeah, we're not there yet. You got to take your time. You start with the devices in a couple of vehicles, you pilot it, you get some drivers involved to tweak the settings and make sure that it's going to work for you and adjust it. Probably try a couple of different vendors and a couple of different trucks and sort of go from there. You have to take it slow and figure out what's going to work within the specific fleet, but start with having a particular thing that you want to solve. So don't just try and fix safety or improve our DOT reportables by 5% or anything like that. You've got to get much more narrow and much more specific than that.
Okay. So industry experience, super, super important. You kind of answered my follow-up question a little bit already, but vendors who have a realistic outlook on the future, would that include like having a bit of a roadmap that they can explain to you as to where this is going? Like, should they be able to speak to um, where this technology in a realistic way is going to take us? Because one of the things that comes to my mind is if I'm talking to a technology vendor, it's pretty easy for them to confuse me quickly and go right over my head and um, what they say sounds good because I don't understand half the words they're saying. Is it, you know, is there anything other than the industry experience and just realistic expectations that I should watch for? Or
That's a good question. And the thing about the roadmap is kind of interesting because I think I'd be skeptical of everybody who gave me a 5-year roadmap.
okay,
Uh, Going back to what we were talking about earlier, but nobody knows exactly how this is going to work in, how it's going to end up being successful. Every dot-com company that got funding had a 5-year roadmap.
Hmm.
And most of those companies don't exist. Pets.com had a 5-year roadmap, trying to sell their 40-pound bags of cat food at a loss, and they were sure that they were going to turn it around. And then what ended up being successful coming out of the internet boom and the dot-com crash was a whole bunch of companies that were very different. So, yeah, I think it's kind of useful to look at what their plan is and what their roadmap is, but I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that because nobody knows yet. It is going to be a while before people
Hmm.
really figure out what's going on. I think I would look, I would want to talk to the vendor about their experiences with other similarly sized companies.
Hmm.
So all of the vendors are working very diligently with the giant fleets because those people have a ton of data. You can train your model much more quickly with 10,000 trucks than with 100. So they're looking at those. But if you are not a 10,000 truck company and you want to look at doing something like this, well, what does that vendor's experience look like with other 200 truck or 50 truck companies? And again, if you're 50 trucks, probably it's not time. But if you're 300 trucks and your insurance company's pushing it, or you're part of a captive or some other larger group that is saying we want to do this because we think it's going to help, then see if you can pool resources and kind of share the pain, but also look to the vendors to talk about what their experiences are with those different size companies so that you can see how is it actually working at other 200 truck companies? How many additional staff members are required to actually solve the problem? And this is where those vendors are going to be unhappy with me. Is it really a good use of time? If you've got to dedicate 2 full-time staff members parsing the data, wouldn't you be better off having 2 people doing something else, having those two people doing coaching for your drivers, or building community, like doing road training and things like that, isn't that going to work better? Or some other kind of program. There's a lot of different things that you could be doing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes the tech is absolutely the answer, but you have to think about all of those things and keep it in mind. And
Right.
yes, I am once again the guy whose business is selling technology, telling people that maybe technology isn't the way to go. I own my irony. Yes.
But that's good. I mean, I think it underscores the point of always starting with your business priorities and your strategies and letting that lead you the direction you want to go rather than this is the shiny bauble. Let me see what I can do with this.
Well,
Um,
that actually, just on that point, I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but I can see there's a lot of that out there where there's a lot of people that are feeling like, oh, I got to get involved because I hear about it everywhere. And every conference that you go to, there's people doing sessions talking about AI. And it's like, oh, if I'm not doing something, I'm falling behind. And they get very worried about it. So, that is why I wanted to start by saying it's okay. Don't worry about it. All of those sessions that are talking about how AI is working, they're all coming from the vendors who want to talk about their solution. And they're getting pressure to sell and pressure to show that they're becoming the dominant player. And those few companies that are talking about it, they are sometimes having success, sometimes they're really not. But don't worry about it. If you're not doing much yet, don't worry about it.
Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. I mean, it kind of um, comes back to the difference between that stat I read about 70 to 90% of companies are using AI, and then what I saw the show of hands in the conference, it was more like 25 to 30% seem to be doing something. We had a number of people say they're using it in the Q&A here that they put in there. And on that, I'll just remind everybody, if you have any questions for Mark or about this, drop them into the Q&A session here, and we're happy to answer those for you and get into those. Until those show up, I've got a litany of other questions for you, and
Go
I'm
for it.
wondering if you can speak a little bit about the pitfalls, sort of like there is a pressure, and you just said it, there is a pressure to to try this and to figure this out. And there's new technologies coming up all the time and new opportunities. And you did just say that, don't get too caught up in that. But there is that pressure, and there's a potential of some big payoff if you
Mhm.
figure this out. But what are some of the things that fleets should be thinking about in terms of risks to avoid? And does it differ based on, your size of fleet, what you're hauling, where you're hauling, anything like
Definitely, the size of fleet makes a difference, as we've talked about, but where you haul and what you haul, not as much. I think the the things to watch for, I mean, the risk is that it ends up making things worse, that you end up creating, you maybe solve one problem and create three others, so there is a little bit of that. But these are avoidable things. And as you point out, there is some potentially huge payoff. And
that?
I can say what has worked best, looking at the fleets that we've talked to and all of the sort of examples that we've seen of real successes, what tends to work well is when fleets have one person that is sort of designated, and usually it's a driver, designated as the technology person. And and actually, this is not specific to AI. This has worked, and I remember first hearing about this with AOBRs before there was even ELDs. There was the fleets would have like sort of one person who's really into this thing, and that person would be the kind of tasked with exploring it, poking around with it a bit, looking at that chasm diagram. There is some driver in the fleet that is at the far left side of that, that's an innovator who likes to play around with the tech and figure out how to make it useful. That person can be really useful within the company. We've got a couple of people within our organization that are very much like that, and they're the people that we say, play around with this and see how it might be useful. Once they've done that for a little bit and you start to get a sense of what works and what doesn't work and how these things are going to disrupt your existing processes and where they may create some additional challenges that you have to address, that's when you can move it out into more of a pilot that involves multiple people. And again, the key thing is got to always be including the drivers in this. If drivers aren't involved, they are not going to like it. It's going to be a problem. And it is absolutely something that can really benefit from their experience as well, because they will provide a lot of good feedback on how to improve it and how to make these things more efficient and more valuable. So I would start small, start with maybe one person, then play around a little bit. And once that person has you sort of a sense, that person might come back, after 3 months and say, I still haven't figured it out, which means maybe it's not quite there yet, right? Maybe it is time to park it for a bit. But if they come back after a couple of months and say, okay, I'm really liking this, it works great here, it helps in these areas, all right, well, then you go to a pilot. Then the pilot, you get a few more people, you're going to start to get more of the staff involved. So now it's not just safety and a driver. Maybe it is a safety and driver and operations, or one part of operations that's involved, and maybe maintenance needs to be in there. But you keep it fairly small, figure out the impact of this on the other operations, and then start planning a larger rollout once you know these things, once you have a good sense of how to make the most of it. And I would say, in terms of specific types of AI to be thinking about, the AI-based safety products are good. The AI-based sort of dash cams and telematics and all of those kind of things are good places to start. They are getting better. Predictive tools are getting better, but they still have got some challenges. So you want to check the data on that stuff and be kind of double checking what they're telling you to make sure that they are giving you things that sort of pass the smell test. And then I would also say, generally, for trucking, generative AI, having the AI write something for you or do some of that sort of creative work is not as useful. There's a lot of hype. A lot of the AI hype that you hear is coming out of generative AI, people using it to write essays, write proposals, use it for creating art and creating movies and stuff like that. And that's not going to be that helpful for trucking, because you want to have those opportunities to speak to drivers directly, even if it's just a text message. It's better coming from a real person than from a generative agent. So that's kind of where I would focus.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea of having the one person who's almost the AI champion in the company, and is seeking
Hmm.
out those opportunities, and you don't have to do everything they say, but
Hmm.
they're the one sort of pushing the ideas, so that at least you're considering them, and either approving them or discounting them based
Yeah.
on
And the
merits.
more it comes from drivers, the more credibility you have within the organization to push it out to the rest of the drivers. The more this is being supported, if not driven by the people that are going to be using it or affected by it most, the more they're involved, the better it is, the more success you end up having.
Yeah, just got a comment in here. So from Stephen Ralston, especially on the predictive analytics, to make sure the accuracy rate is spot on. We are currently sitting at 95% accuracy, and will not utilize it until we reach a higher accuracy rate. So yeah, I mean, it comes back to that garbage in, garbage out.
Mhm.
If you've got bad data coming in, then you're going to get bad information or results coming out
Yeah.
of AI.
Well, and I think that's also a great example, Stephen, sorry to put you on the spot a bit here, but a larger fleet that's in a better position to be doing something like that. And a fleet with a larger parent organization that is going to be providing the support and probably providing a little bit of push to start doing something with it. But yeah, you've got a data scientist, you've got people that are working on that. That's where a lot of the real momentum is now, and a lot of the real advances are happening is in that area. In the fleets like that kind of profile, where it's a larger organization, and there's more ability to do that. But you're still discovering that, well, it's not quite there. Like, how much do you trust it? You might look at that and say, oh, it only misses 5% of the time, but that 5% can be significant.
Hmm. It's interesting what you said about the generative AI and the large language models there maybe not being something worth trucking companies trying, because I would have thought that there might be an opportunity there, whether it's helping to write SOPs or analyzing spreadsheets of data. But you think that, and that's where too, I think it comes back to me a lot. That's where a lot of the hype seems to be around those large language models too,
Yeah.
and
Now,
all
in
that
terms of
revolves around.
generating, so yeah, I should clarify my position. Not a problem at all using those things to help write something to clean up SOPs. I'm sure it's being used for proposals. Most companies are working that into kind of their sales process in terms of using it for proposal writing or deal analysis and things like that. That all makes perfect sense. But in terms of the sort of the world of safety, uh, having like safety and drivers can be a fraught relationship to begin with
Mhm.
at the best of times. I mean, a lot of it is seen as safety kind of being the safety police, or they're calling to harangue you about something. So you don't want to make that worse by having it automatically coming from some machine or some bot that very much sounds like not a person. They would much prefer to have that conversation with a human. And yes, it is going to take you longer. It is going to require more time, but it is going to provide a lot of other benefits at the same time as well.
Yeah, okay, that and when you frame it like that, that makes sense, because it sort of aligns with that whole um, philosophy, I guess, that you've touched on a couple of times, that it's you don't want to be handing over a chunk of the business to AI. And it comes back to your example you gave at the beginning. It needs to be a tool to help a person do a job versus to do the job and get rid of the person.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Bring it back to the power tools. Ultimately, what you're looking for is a nail gun, but the nail gun's not going to build the house on its own, right? You still have to do the framing, and you're still going to use a regular hammer sometimes. You're still going to use the screwdriver and the wrench periodically, but you will have the power tools to help with other things, and they will speed it up and they will make things better, but they're not going to do everything. So you got to figure out the right places for them.
Excellent, makes sense. So we brought that analogy full circle.
Mhm.
And with a couple of minutes left, then I guess I'll turn it back to you, Mark. And just any parting thoughts or comments you have for trucking companies kicking around this AI or looking for ways to decide whether or not they need to get into it.
Uh, I think the only parting comment would be please don't go and tell all of our integration partners that I just said not to use their products because I think that they do have good products. I just think that people have to be cautious about it and don't worry if you're not doing very much because the time will come and it will become very obvious how to use it. And it will be like the internet. In 1995 and 1996, not very many of us were on the internet. But by 2000, everybody was, once we figured out how to do it. And it'll be the same thing with AI. It'll get to a point where everybody's using it, and it's very clear how to make good success out of it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and on that, thank you everybody for coming out today. Really enjoyed this session. I hope you did as well. As I mentioned off the top, we did record this, so you will be getting an email with the link to the recording. If you have any other questions that you want to send us about this or about any other topics, you can give us a call with the number on the screen or email us at support@carriersedge.com. And it was great having you here. And thank you for spending a little bit of time with us today. Enjoy the rest of your
I,
day.
thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mark.